I'm John Jannarone, editor-in-chief of IPO Edge. Very happy to be back at the New York Stock Exchange. Today we are meeting with BigHat Biosciences, which is doing some really interesting stuff in the biotech field, employing AI and ML. We're going to talk about that and a lot more. And we have with us Elizabeth Schwarzbach, who's the Chief Business Officer. Elizabeth, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start big picture. What is BigHat Biosciences? Tell us what it's all about.
Perfect. Yeah, so BigHat is a biotech company, as you said, who's leveraging machine learning integrated with a wet lab to design next generation antibodies. We are located in San Mateo, California, which is just south of San Francisco, really a enormous biotech hub and really valuable to be part of that community. We have around 55 people today and have raised just over $100 million. Our seed round was led by 8VC, and AMI Cloud Ventures and Innovation Endeavor were also in that round. Our Series A was led by Andreessen Horowitz, and then our B was led by Section 32. Amgen, who's been a longtime partner pretty much since the beginning, also came into that round along with Bristol Myers Squibb and others. So really fortunate to have that funding to really build out our platform, but now what we're obsessively focused on is advancing therapeutics to patients. And we built this platform really to address the need of safer, more effective therapeutics moving faster.
Great. Well, that's a really impressive list of names there, your partners and investors, Elizabeth. Tell us a little bit more about the exciting part of this story, I think, is the AI and ML part. So that's what everybody wants to hear about. Tell us how that works.
Yeah, sure. So machine learning has been applied across pretty much all aspects of drug discovery and development. But the initial process was primarily made more on the development side of things, using machine learning to select patients for clinical trials or being able to analyze enormous amounts of real-world data to see what are addressable patient populations or what drugs are working or not working. What was rather frustrating, really, what was the genesis of creating BigHat was machine learning hadn't really made an impact in discovering new medicines.
Okay.
And part of that was, to test predictions, there's an enormous amount of cost to make every molecule that your machine learning predicts is better. It takes time. And so BigHat built from the ground up a wet lab that was fit for purpose for machine learning, meaning that we can make a large number of antibodies every single week. So at BigHat, our lab's making up to 1,000 antibodies every single week.
Wow.
And characterizing them very rapidly. So we're leveraging new technologies that have come out to do that, tools for the characterization. We're leveraging new synthesis techniques and methodologies. And we're using robots, so it's reproducible. That's one of the key things too. Initially we thought there's so many large databases out there of data, but really the quality and fidelity of the data for machine learning is extremely important. So we have a closed loop where in the lab we're generating the data that's fed using our proprietary LIMS or lab information system into our models and telling them where they did well and where they did poorly, and then they build off of those ones where they did well to get to that high quality therapeutic for patients.
That's really interesting, Elizabeth. I'm wondering, where do you find people who have the right skill set to do this? I feel like you got to be a data scientist and maybe a PhD. I mean, what kind of a mix have we got?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and talent is at the core of BigHat. Our team is why we've been successful to date and why we are now moving programs towards the clinic. We have, as you mentioned, our founders have training both in machine learning, computer science, and biochemistry. So they have that paired background, but that is almost impossible to find in most people.
Yeah.
And so we have a really, closely integrated team across disciplines. So we have a software engineering team that's built the infrastructure to allow this to happen.
Yeah.
And that's probably equal to the size of our machine learning data science team. We've recruited from the networks of our founders initially, and now do have open roles. So I'll put a plug in for good talent out there to join us. And across industries, a lot of the learnings from other industries where there are early adopters of algorithms to generate predictions,
Yeah.
they can be applied anywhere. Because then in the wet lab, we have our protein engineers and really kind of fundamental wet lab experimentalists that are doing the data generation.
Gotcha. Now, I think you touched on this a little bit, but can you tell us about what some of the biggest challenges that there are in early stage biotech?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, at BigHat, I would say technical risk is always going to be a key challenge for biotechs. You can design the perfect molecule, but if you're, targeting the wrong protein, it's not going to have impact on that disease. So really, there's always that technical risk. There's translation from the models we use in the wet lab, the animal models we use to humans. We've gotten much better at that translation, and we look to use human disease relevant models where we can, but there's still that inherent risk of the work that we do. So we look to limit that risk by having as large of a battery of tests that we can do in that characterization that do at least suggest translation, and then look to test early as we can in vivo models, in animals, to try to mitigate that risk. We also, as a therapeutics company, we have an internal pipeline that's also paired with partnerships. And on our internal pipelines, we're really focused on areas where there are well-validated therapeutic targets, meaning we understand that if you can engage this target with a drug, it will have impact on the disease. But the challenge to date, and really what BigHat's trying to overcome, is how do you actually engage that? So do you need a bispecific molecule, something where there's two different engagement points? Or do you need a really small nanobody? Do you need something that engages the immune system, like a T-cell engager? Do you need something super targeted, so it's only active in a tumor that's acidic versus your normal tissue that's basic? So, it's kind of those types of design challenges that we're looking actually to leverage with this platform, and we look to limit any biology risk, so understanding of disease. With our partners, a lot of our partners have that biology expertise. They have the tests for the different disease areas. So for our partner program, we're willing to go into those more challenging areas of biology or disease.
Gotcha. All right, last topic. We're here at the New York Stock Exchange. You're the Chief Business Officer. Tell us what your thoughts are in going public. Maybe it's a couple years out, but tell us how you feel about the market. There were so many biotech companies that went public, a couple years ago. Now almost none. So what are you thinking?
Our funding strategy to date really has been on raising proceeds for the best use of our platform and pipeline, and getting these patients drugs that are more effective and safer. So we really have leveraged kind of the macro environment for that purpose. And we think about going public as when we have programs that are in the clinic, and we have near-term milestones on those programs that can generate catalytic value for our shareholders. That's really when we think about going public. That could be in as near as 24 months, and it could be later. But I think, it's really dependent on the timing of our pipeline and that kind of value creation that we see to sustain a public company.
And we were talking in the green room here before we started that there were some companies that went public maybe too early, so you want to avoid doing that, right?
Yeah, I think right now, people are looking at the biotech market broadly speaking and saying it's really challenging out there. And one of the reasons it's really challenging is that many biotech companies went public without clinical programs, without a news flow, and with really high valuations. So now they're almost in the catch-up game. So, their valuations have been depressed now, and they're trying to catch up with where they, went public. We want to kind of be ahead of that, and why we're really being purposeful about how much we raise at which valuation, given our pipeline and partnerships.
All right, really thoughtful answer, Elizabeth. I've truly enjoyed this interview. Thanks for joining me here at the New York Stock Exchange, Elizabeth. I hope to see you again sometime. Jannarone here with IPO Edge.